So we finished part one. We're getting ready to start part two, and we talked about how when we were kids we were beginning to be shaped. Last night I was talking about that 4, 5, 6 year old age group. We're starting to take things in through our five senses, through watching our moms and dads, to the things that are occurring on the playground, to the things that are occurring at home or in the classroom. All those things are shaping us. And I just want to clarify really quick that we have a soul or a mind, and that kind of dictates what our brain does. The brain's the physiology piece to it, the physical piece to it. So through our five senses we're taking all these different things in, and I was saying that when we're little like that, we really don't realize a lot of these things that are occurring, right? Because we're young, our minds are young. We don't understand the psychology. We're not really deep thinkers yet. We believe everything we see and hear, and so that's why it's such a critical age. What we see our moms and dads do, we replicate that. If we have trouble at school and we come home and get yelled at or grounded or whatever, we respond to that. There's a response to everything, and that generates a thought. Well, our emotions are intertwined with our thoughts. So for every thought, there's an emotional response. That could be good or bad. So again, when we're young like that, we're just kind of taking everything in like a sponge. So when we're little, we're all going to handle things differently. We're all unique people. We all handle things uniquely. I may handle things worse than the next kid did. I may cry when the next kid didn't cry. He got over it. Well, that could have been because of his influences. It could have been from the way his mom or his dad reacted to situations, or maybe he had siblings that he watched and I didn't, so I reacted a certain way. So really our wisdom and our education is coming from those that influence us. And I remember one time when I was little, this is right after we moved, I didn't really know anybody. I was out for the baseball team, and I had to go to the bathroom really bad, and I peed my pants in front of everybody, and it demoralized me. And that being demoralized like that just stole my self-esteem, took all my confidence away, and it was just kind of a rough time in my life. And your mom and dads comfort you, but you still deal with that embarrassment at school. And that's a part of it that if we don't, that's a part of it that can begin to create a pattern, and if we don't somewhere in our life get a hold of that pattern and say, this maybe isn't the right way to think about this, it continues on through our childhood and teenage years and early adulthood life. So that's where a lot of our thinking comes from. Our mind or our soul. We have a brain, but our soul is where our reasoning is. It's where our five senses are. It's where our conscious mind is, as well as our subconscious mind. But our brain's our physical part of it. So when we're young, there's a lot going on. We're being developed, right? We're in early childhood development, and we believe everything. We believe everything that our moms and dads say or do. We watch them, we study them. We believe what our teachers tell us, and it can be good or bad. We learn things on the playground. We learn things from older siblings or family members or friends. We're constantly watching. We're constantly bringing things in through our five senses, and that's how a thought's created. And with a thought, we have to understand that our emotions are intertwined around a thought. And a thought is generated from something that comes through our senses, whether it's something we see. Maybe we see our dad do something, maybe we see our mom do something, maybe we see something happen on the playground, maybe we hear a kid tell us that we're dumb or stupid or we're not good enough. Maybe we witness a sibling getting more attention than we're getting. All these things are coming through our senses, right? Well, as I said, all these things that are coming in generate a thought, and there's an emotion attached to that. It could be a positive emotion or it could be a negative emotion. Well, then what happens is we begin to think about that, and then that begins to be transferred down into our subconscious mind, and that's our subconscious mind doesn't have a reasoning. It just takes in whatever our conscious mind allows in. Well, when we're a kid, we don't understand any of this crap. We're a kid. You know, we believe everything we see, we believe everything we hear, and we're happy-go-lucky. We have the basic needs. You know, we want to be loved, we want to eat. We're a kid. Well, what happens is all of these things are taking place in our young life during our developmental years, and it's beginning to form us. It's beginning to form how we think. That could be positive or negative. You know, if we go through early childhood and there could be little things that trigger it that we don't get over in our childhood. And unless the influences in our life, mom and dad, aunts and uncles, older brothers and sisters, teachers, unless we're influenced by them in a positive way, how do we learn how to respond to it as a child? If we don't have any wisdom, or we don't have any encouragement, we just respond to it in the only way we know how to respond, and that can be bad. That's where self-esteem issues begin. That's where confidence issues begin. That's where the insecurities issues begin. But it can be also the opposite of that. We can have very encouraging influences on our life, and we're able to, it builds us up. And when we're a kid and we don't get picked on the baseball team, or we see our older sibling get something bigger for his birthday than we do, well, we're built up enough that our thought patterns typically are on the positive side, because most of our thoughts that we have are wrapped in positive emotions. But there's the opposite to that too. So, you know, as a parent, I have two kids. I have a 9-year-old son, and I got a 17-year-old daughter. Well, as they were growing up, I was trying to study these things, and you know, kids are amazing. You can actually begin to witness their character forming and how they handle situations. And you know, as a parent, there's no right or wrong, right? It's tough. Being a parent's tough, but we're always making the adjustments. I mean, my son responds totally different than my daughter. She's, you know, I have to get after her pretty hard before I can get it through her. It's very strong-willed, great girl, very confident. But my son, on the other hand, I just look at him wrong and it crushes him. So if I take the same approach that I do with my daughter to my son, well, there's that fine line where it begins to create that negative emotion in his thoughts. And you can actually see it. You can actually see it through the day and how he handles situations. So I try to make those adjustments, right? I mean, tough love. I don't, you know, I'm not saying you don't discipline them. Don't take me wrong. Don't send me comments on all that. It's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is early childhood development and how our thoughts begin to form when we're young. So that's how we begin to develop our thought process. But I want to make it clear that unless when we're young we're being educated in the best way you can with a kid through mostly encouragement, we're going to begin on down that path. And depending on how our path is, whether it's we're good in sports or we're not good in sports, or there's different trials and tragedies that happens when our kids, heaven forbid. It's a cruel world, and kids can be cruel. Depending on what kind of a kid you are, that can have a huge effect on you. So as we get up into junior high, we're stepping out of elementary school and we're stepping into junior high with thinking in a way that was based upon how we handled things when we were younger. Now, how we handled things when we were younger is all dependent upon our influences. It's nature versus nurture, right? So how we handle things, that's what we're going to carry in. Now, as we begin to get older and we begin to get wiser and understand who we are, we can adapt and begin to modify the way we think in those things. But when we're young, those are really critical years for us. So that's a really important time. But this is going to get better. We're going to get into adulthood. Trust me, stick with this. But even when you're young like this, if you're racing dirt bikes, when you're out there on the track and you're getting into junior high, you're already beginning to develop patterns. And those patterns can be good or bad, right? If you're going out there and here's an example of this. If you're going out there racing in, say on a 65, and you've spent 4 or 5 years now riding a certain way and have never been corrected on it, or never have been influenced a certain way, well, guess how you're going to ride when you jump up to that 85. You're going to ride the same way, right? Well, that's the same way it is with our thinking. If we think a certain way, if our thought life is a certain way and we don't have any coaching, then we're going to graduate up into junior high with the same kind of thinking, the same way on a dirt bike. That's why these riding schools you see people putting on are so valuable, because unless we were coached in that area and we're talked to, we're going to go out there and ride the best way we know how to ride. And that's not saying it's wrong. It's just we're working with what we have to work with. And not everybody has the resources to have a coach or go to a riding school. But school's the same way. If we have some really good teachers that really influence our life in a positive way, a lot of times you'll see the byproduct of that as we get older.